Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, January 27th, 2022. And, man, I haven't done one of these Christian headlines or Christian news segments in a while. As you guys know, I'm traveling a lot, so I'm not able to, update you guys in the morning like I was trying to do maybe about a couple of months ago. But yeah, I do have this chance to go ahead and bring out this article that I was reading from. Kind of caught my attention. I was reading this on another site, but it linked me to this article. I think this one is the original one. This is the one who put out the original post concerning this information. And I wanted to go ahead and read it and, have you guys take a look at it as well. And let's just go ahead and get right into it. It says, the group most likely to still be missing from your church. So basically what this article is saying is that since the pandemic, there are a lot of people who stopped going to church and they just have not come back. And some of these people, quite frankly, probably will not come back. So this is what they're kind of talking about in this particular article. And this is from Lifeway Research. And as you guys know, I will leave a link to this website or to this article in the description so you guys can, on your own time, read it for yourself. Well, let's go ahead. And this is by Marissa Postel. It says, much like the economy and the healthcare system, your church is likely still recovering from the effects of the pandemic. Part of that recovery is seeing the return of your pre-COVID attendees, many of which still have not come back. Quote, the ripple effect, congregations, COVID, and the future of life. End quote. A fall 2021 study from Gray Matter Research and Infinity Concepts suggests long-term changes may be coming to the church and reveal those who have not returned to services might not be surprising to many pastors. And you guys know that when I'm always talking about church culture and I'm talking about people who claim to be Christians, and they come to church, they just want a place to be at on Saturday or Sunday, right? Let's just be real. Sunday, most of us are Sunday attending churchgoers. Doesn't mean that, you got to go to church on Sunday, because I know some people see that and they want to spark that conversation up. We're not even going to get into that. But anyway, we know that there's a lot of people who just want something to do on the Sunday, and church is their thing. They use it as a social gathering spot, right? Some people it's just become routine. Just come to church. You're gonna see your family. You're gonna see your friends, and we're gonna all come hug, kumbaya. Once we come back home, it's back to life, back to reality. Let's prepare for the next week, etc., etc. But we know that in 2020, when the pandemic hit, a lot of churches were shut down. I think last year, some churches just now started to reopen for the first time in over a year. And there are some people who have kind of gotten into the routine of not being in church and filling that empty time slot where they used to go to church. They filled it with something else, and they've gotten accustomed to that. And most likely it's something that doesn't require them to actually travel to a fellowship, to actually be around people. And they're just like, they found this alternative and now it's better. So a lot of these people are not coming back to church, and they're trying not to come back to church. Right. So let's go ahead and continue to read. It says, when people stop going to church, prior to the introduction of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States in early 2020, nearly 9 in 10 American evangelicals, 87%, were attending church on at least a semi-regular basis. Almost all of them, 89%, stopped attending for at least a time because of the pandemic according to the Gray Matter report. So I want to kind of put that into perspective. So there were 9 out of 10 American evangelicals who were attending church on a semi-regular basis. So 9 out of 10 people were kind of going to church, probably not every Sunday religiously like a lot of us do, who are in good fellowships and otherwise. But the 9 out of the 10 people that were going to church, maybe not every week, like I said, but on a semi-regular basis, like the article just stated, that's 87%, right? It's 87% of people who were actually doing that in America. But those who actually, out of those 9 people, out of those 9 out of 10, 89% of those people who were not able to attend a church meeting have stopped going to church altogether. So that's a lot of folks. And I can't do my I can't do all of the math in my head, but I'll probably say it almost seems like that if I'm reading the numbers correctly, it seems like that out of those 9 out of 10 people, maybe 3 or 4 of them, 3 or 4 out of those 10 people are going back to church. So that's a huge drop. It's a huge drop. Let's continue. Those who stopped attending church, most 77% did so because their churches paused in-person services. But some 12% chose to stop attending in person even though their churches continued to gather. The remaining 11% continued to attend in-person worship throughout the pandemic, according to the report. Lifeway Research found more than 9 in 10 U.S. Protestant churches had stopped gathering for in-person worship by the end of March 2020. Churches did not reopen at pre-pandemic levels until the summer of 2021. Just like I said, a lot of people did not start opening their churches until like the summertime of last year. And that was well over a year, because I think we went into lockdown, what was that, like March or April or something like that in 2019. And you got a lot of these churches that did not open back up until in the summer. And you had some that actually stayed closed, even a little while after that. Many who chose to stop attending services did due to health-related concerns amid the pandemic, but research suggests that other reasons may have also played a role for some. Who stopped going? It's a pretty important question. Already infrequent churchgoers were much more likely to stop attending in-person worship than those who regularly attended church before, according to Gray Matter. Of those who attended church less than monthly before the pandemic, 25% chose to stop attending once the pandemic began. Only 11% of those who had attended church at least monthly prior to the pandemic made the decision to stop attending in-person services. And that has kind of been one of the big things that has kind of kept people away, is that some people have some legitimate health concerns. They don't want to get sick. They don't, and some people have children or family members who are, immune compromised, or they may have some type of illness or sickness to where if they do catch something like the coronavirus, then that could really, that may be something that could kill them, that could potentially kill them, because they may not have the strength, or they may not have the immune system to fight off a virus of that magnitude. Like, a healthy person like me, I can be able to get over that with little to no treatment. But a person who's already immune compromised or already has some underlying health issue, that could be a life or death thing for them. The same applied for Bible readership and small group attendance. While some committed, active churchgoers made the decision to pause their in-person church attendance, it was the evangelicals, less committed to those practices, who were most likely seemingly to disconnect. Among those who read the Bible weekly, 10% decided to stop attending in-person services. For those who read the Bible less often, the percentage almost doubled to 19%, who chose to avoid attending in person during the pandemic. Similar, 9% of those in a small group chose to stop, while 16% of those in a small group made that decision. Now, I do go to a small church, and for the most part, I think all of us we've started back meeting together. We haven't had any issues since the pandemic with continuing services and stuff. And this is why I kind of like the smaller group fellowship, because it feels more like a family, right? Like we actually want to see each other. We actually want to be around each other. We don't just see each other only when it's time for us to come to church and to worship together. But we do call each other on a regular. We do talk to each other outside of that. All right, in February 2021, 9 in 10 Protestant churchgoers said when COVID-19 is no longer an active threat to people's health, they plan to attend in-person worship services at least as often as they did before the pandemic, according to Lifeway research. Yet, as of September 2021, only 3 in 4 churchgoers have returned as their churches have reopened. What they did instead: for most American evangelicals, Sunday mornings look different for a time, but most sought out substitutes for in-person services rather than completely, quote, checking out, end quote, from the church. Among people whose churches stopped holding in-person services for a time, 98% sought another avenue for worship. However, among those who proactively chose to stop attending, 12% did not seek any substitute, according to Gray Matter. And that's what I was trying to bring out earlier, that you had some people that has filled that slot with something else, whether it's getting on YouTube and listening to a lot of pastors. Now, one thing that I have seen, a lot of guys' channels have grown because of the pandemic. Since people were not holding in-person services, they were going to YouTube. I don't know if I've seen too much of a bump in my channel, but there were other people whose channels have grown dramatically. Like some of these people were just under 10,000 subscribers maybe a year ago. Now some of these guys are reaching 30 and 40,000 subscribers, and they're constantly growing. But shouts out to the guys that I know who are actually out there, teaching the truth. Although online services were the most common substitute for in-person services, 78%, many turned to other substitutes such as reading the Bible and or worshiping at home alone or with family, 48%. Watching church services on TV, 39%, or listening to Christian radio, 28%. Many churchgoers did more of those activities in 2020 as they found themselves away from in-person church services. According to Lifeway research, 53% of U.S. Protestant churchgoers participated in online worship at their own church more in 2020 compared to 2019. 23% watched more worship services on TV. 23% did more online Bible studies. 21% watched more online services at a different church. 11% listened more to radio worship services. And I'm pretty sure they probably mean something such as, like podcasts and stuff like that, right? While most evangelicals were substituting in-person services for some form of digital service, 22% of evangelicals who were not attending church prior to the pandemic began to substitute their normal Sunday morning activities for online church services, according to Great Matter. About 3% of all evangelicals began watching church online during the pandemic, about 1.7 million adults. Lifeway research found 45% of all Americans watched a Christian church service online during the pandemic, including 15% who say they normally do not attend church in person. As churches think about drawing back their missing churchgoers, they should be mindful that most are those who are already missing on many Sundays prior to the pandemic. That's a great point. Those who, instead of trying to get those members back, you got to try to figure out why people were not going to church or, attending church prior to that. So, it's definitely something that us as the body of Christ, we have to take into consideration. But yeah, I think we're living in a time, and like I've said this before, it's a separation of the wheat and the tares. Christ is going to continue to build his church, and that's what I want you guys to understand from watching this particular segment and listening to this article. Christ's church will continue to prevail. He's already said it: the gates of hell will not prevail against my church. So the true church, you have nothing to worry about. But there are some wheat, and there are some tares that are being removed from the wheat, and I think that this is just the time. And on the flip side of that, this is also something that I think is good, because there are some people who have been trapped in a lot of these churches, and the reason why they're still there is because the connections and the networking and the networks that they've made in those churches, the relationships they've built in those churches, and some of those relationships were toxic. And maybe this is God's way of kind of separating them from those people. So therefore, the person who Christ has called or is calling, now they can be put into a sound fellowship, or they can end up studying, reading the Bible for themselves. Because, I've seen a lot of people, who have kind of made that transition from sitting in church from, 20 or 30 years, barely reading the Bible, only listening to what the pastor was saying. But then they turn around and they're not going to church, and they're actually reading the Bible for themselves. And now they're coming to the conclusion that, hey, there's more to this Bible and there's more to the Word of God than what I was being taught in some of these churches. But, again, on the flip side of that, unfortunately, people have fallen into a lot of false teachings and a lot of cults and stuff like that. So it's always two sides to that coin, but, no matter what, we have to pray for those who have been affected by this. Those in the church, the whole body of Christ has been affected by this. So that's why we have to be prepared to witness to these people. We got to make sure that our doctrine is right and exact, so therefore we can present the gospel to these people. But, anyway, you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think that there are a lot of valid reasons of why some people should not go back to church? Do you think that majority of these churches that are not getting their members back is because, they were weak churches anyway, and they were never preaching the gospel, never preaching the truth of God? Or do you just happen to believe that, this pandemic has really, is really shaking up the church, but Christ's true church is not rattled at all? We're going to continue to press on and persevere. Christ has already warned us of these days, and we just got to be ready. Got to continue to prepare ourselves. But, no matter what you guys think, as always, leave it in the comment section below. And, as always, like this video, rate it, share it, subscribe, hit that notifications bell so you guys can be notified whenever I upload a video or whenever I get ready to go live. And, you guys enjoy the rest of your morning.